Funny thing happened while we were playing Hashtag Blood. It stopped. On Sundays we play games, and Saturdays we talk about game development. But I've been doing lots of in real life stuff that has screwed up our schedule, so it's no big deal if I say, let's use that problem we saw in Hashtag Blood as a teaching moment, because wouldn't you know, we could do that. We have a card game we're making, and there could be a problem that we can also see in our game. Perhaps it's best I sketch first, actually. We've been working on our art direction for this card game. And that's an interesting puzzle in its own. The art direction for our battle card game clearly is going to include the art for the card. Yes. But there are opportunities to do cinematics and other things. Long story short, there's more than just dramatic artwork of powerful forces that go into battle. That's going to go on the cards, but there's lots of other stuff. Okay. So we will talk a bit about our game and game development as we normally do on Saturdays, because this is really a programming issue, or engineering issue is, I guess, a better way to say it. We are engineering software. That's what modern games are. Don't be scared. Big deal. What we're going to do, though, is, well, after I pull up the stream on my monitor thing, we are going to tackle an issue we saw in our game, or at least I saw it. I noticed it, and I'm going to relate it to what we saw in Blood. What happened was, we're in Hashtag Blood. We're in a dungeon. We are solving puzzles and doing that kind of gamey thing, and there was a puzzle we needed to solve. While I switch to a tablet. The puzzle we needed to solve had a timer. We couldn't get to the thing we needed, and so we had to start the timer, and at the end of the timer it would be trapped again. But we got there in time and got the thing, and then the timer ran out and we were trapped. Whoops. Clearly, and we tried everything to get out of it. We could not. Clearly what we ran into was a bug, and it was a non-trivial bug. It stopped the game. There was nothing for us to do except quit. Like, literally, that was the only option. And start the level all over again. That kind of fail state is critical. And it's the kind of thing you want to, obviously, have your players avoid. You want them to avoid it if they can. What it prompted us to talk about is the testing process, and so very briefly, what I described is 4 stages to the testing process. First, unit testing tests the smallest unit. What do I mean by that? Well, each feature, each rule, could be tested. Each unit. So, in this case, the puzzle was there is an item you need to get, and you can't get it if the barrier is up. And that worked. That rule is true, right? If the barrier is up, you can't get the thing. It's true. You are prevented from moving there, and being at the item means that you could collect it. So you are prevented from collecting it because you can't get there. Yeah. Another rule in this puzzle was You pull this lever thing, and over time there is a switch that is activated. And when the timer's up, the switch is deactivated. That switch literally integrated with the other unit. So the switch had a unit, and this integrated with the barrier to the thing we wanted. The barrier went down while the switch was engaged, and it went back up when the switch was done. Now, it was a puzzle, so we had to figure out some things. Obviously, I guess maybe I should elaborate. It's not obvious, or it may not be obvious, that without the player, the game doesn't exist. And in this case, talking about this puzzle, and I was engaged with this system in order to figure out the puzzle. And figuring out the puzzle is sometimes a bit of a struggle to see what it is that you're supposed to do. But once you do, then it can be a skill, or it can be, configuration of things or whatever. At some point, though, the player, in this case the user, needs to understand what's going on, and any software has usability testing to make sure that, well, if all the units are working, good. If they're all integrated and they can all talk to each other and they work together well, that's good. Usability, what am I saying? But then there's usability testing to make sure the player can interface with this system as well. Otherwise, it is a brick. We've been talking about this. Our game is a brick right now. Not because it doesn't work. It works great. It does everything. But because the player won't understand it. That's why we're working on art and sound. And, we've already done some story, but we're going to integrate these things. So we're here in our stuff because we did some minor role-playing as the player and realized this is completely unusable because players won't understand. There is a fourth stage to testing, and it's typically called stress testing, where we look for those things. Because if you think about it, wait a minute, did we test to make sure every piece works? Yes, done. Did we test to make sure that those pieces work together? Yeah, good, done. So the system totally works. Did we test to make sure the player gets it? Yeah. Well, cool, aren't we done? This last bit, stress testing, looks for those odd cases that you may not have designed for, either in the units or in the integration. And even though the player gets it, this edge case can still exist and cause a problem. In our case, I would pull the switch that started the timer. This lowered the barrier, and I was able to go, here's the barrier, here's the item I want. And I pull the switch, and the timer's running. These notes don't make any sense. The timer's running. It's a stopwatch, you see. Anyway, the timer's running, and as it does, this barrier is down, and so I ran over here. And I got the item. And it said, yay, you got the item, because that is also a unit, that is also a feature, that is also a common thing in all parts of the game where you collect something cool, you hold it up and you say yay, and it takes time. Wouldn't you know, during that time, the timer ran out, the barrier went up, and we were stuck. We noticed that all the rules of the game are working. This timer did its thing, made the barrier go down when it was running, made the barrier go back up when it was done. This barrier is doing its job. We can't move to and from this space. Maybe it should have been altered, but everything was working. This edge case pointed out a problem that no one designed for. No one thought that through and said, hold on, what happens if on the edge case, on the very rare condition that the player pulls the switch, runs the timer, the barrier comes down, they run over here, gets there, and they're stuck because the barrier comes back up. What happens when the player is in here and the barrier is up? They've gotten the item, the barrier is up. What happens? Well, there's a number of things we could do with this. We could easily say you could always leave the barrier, you just can't enter. That might be a little bit of a trick in terms of doing something different with what the physics is supposed to do, but it could be done. You could also say, as soon as you get this item, cancel the entire puzzle. Like maybe even you don't need to be able to do this timer anymore. The barrier should certainly go away entirely. In our case, it was actually a like a pressure plate on the floor that like depressed, like went down. So it was like our player was in the hole and stuck that way. And so, and while the barrier was down, what I'm saying barrier down, what I mean was it actually came up. So it was flush with the floor and she could get it. The problem was she said, yay, I got it. And then it depressed again and she was stuck. So another way to solve this would be to say, if she does get it, the puzzle is solved. There's no need for this barrier. There's no need for it to depress again. And so turn this off. That would have been a way to solve it. Another way to solve it would be to allow for any of the other mechanics that she had, like this grappling hook type of thing, or this, I mean, just any kind of thing, even if it was like a roll that somehow magically got her out of the hole or something like that. Because being in the hole is actually not part of this puzzle. There's a number of ways to solve it, but the step one is recognizing that this is an edge case that can happen. And before we can go through potential solutions and figure out which one would be the best in terms of not having to do any extra features, not having to modify too many extra features because that could have problems for other parts of the game that we didn't account for, just trying to keep it simple and separate. You might have to go through a process of figuring out which solution is best. Maybe even the theme of the game needs to be accounted for, and you find the right one and you do it, right? Before we can go there, you need to recognize this could happen. Stress testing is sometimes very difficult to do. You are helped by the fact that these pieces are already in place, they work together, and the player understands them. That's good. So you can do player testing to find these stress test edge cases. It certainly would help to do that in this. Anyway, we ran into it. And this is the worst thing. You don't want your players to run into the problem. Comprehensive reliability assurance is the phrase we use to describe the ultimate goal of testing. Because we should be able to say, before we release our software, we are assured it's going to run all the way through and be very reliable. Well, that can be really difficult. Software is complicated. Games are software. This is complicated stuff. But if you start, one way to break it down is to start at the smallest piece, unit testing, and then integrate, find the problems when you integrate those features, and then put players in front of the system and find out how they don't understand it and what you can do to help them. We've found lots of those problems in Blood as well. And then eventually stress test. If you do it this direction, you're doing it the most efficient way, and you are making progress. It can be difficult to make a testing plan, but this is standard. Unit integration, usability, and stress testing is a way to get to comprehensive reliability assurance. Well, what does that have to do with our game? Hello, what's up? Lectus, I'm talking about the game that we are making. If you would like to do fun things, please feel free to play around with our secret commands. I'm going to continue to do this because I'm talking about the software that we're building and relating it to lessons we learned while we were playing other games. In this case, we also have a problem in our game, and I didn't notice it until we built the game. in the editor, things can run slower. That's one thing. That's the main thing, frankly. But there's also other subtle changes in how the game systems run when it's built. In other words, it's a standalone application. It runs faster and other things. So, perhaps I should switch, because I can demonstrate this and I'll talk it through. When I did build Shuffle Wars, oh, I need to. Hold on. I'm not going to hear this. All right. We have some temporary music in this. And there was actually more than one bug that I saw here. One bug that I saw was when we are in a game. So I'll go into a quick play to just show the feature that showed the bug. The feature is our visual effects. When our cards do battle, there are some minor temporary visual effects. And so I'll just throw some cards down. We'll go into battle. These go by quickly. There's just a few frames. They're actually pretty sketchy. The thing is, what I noticed was after a visual effect like the strike or an explosion, after that sequence finished, the last frame may be sitting there hanging out. Now, I noticed this after I made a build, and I haven't noticed this at all until now. So what I realized was, oh, this is something that happens during the build, and I just haven't seen it. This is a form of stress testing, because what we're saying is the edge case is, what if our frames are just running as fast as possible? Does this animation system still work? Evidently, there was a problem. There was a problem when, in this case, the visual effect animation tool is running, but it's turned off because the animation is done, and that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to be re-triggered, and so it turns off, waiting to be triggered again. Well, that was fine in the editor, and here in the build, this would tend to hold at the last frame. And so you'd see like the last frame of animation sitting there, and it looked kind of bad. I saw this and I said, wow, I haven't noticed that yet, but now that I do see it, I can find a solution for it. Sometimes it can be difficult to solve these issues that are in builds, because as opposed to the editor, you don't have a log, and it's a little harder to track what's going on. In the editor, you're able to run the game and see things behind the scenes at the same time. Here in the build, you don't. You see what the player sees. But I knew if I saw, we'll come back here. If I saw the animation tool, so let me look at this. If I saw the animation tool as, I guess I could go into the scene too. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so we are in the game, and the cards themselves actually hold the elements that play animation. They're literally sitting there waiting to be, excuse me. The elements on the cards are actually sitting there waiting to be triggered. So I'll go do exactly what I just did, which was go into a battle, throw down some cards. And what we'll notice is on the table, there are now cards. These cards have elements on them to do visual effects, like the overlay for attack, something called gather, which is what cards do before they attack. So it's kind of boop, boop. Yeah, you see impact right there, gather and attack. So this turns on and turns off again when it's done. Normally this is fine. And so it's made to play the frames and go over time and blah, blah, blah. And it looks like a thing and yada, yada, yada. Okay. But it would hold that last frame. Well, the way that I realized I could probably deal with that is by thinking it through and analyzing it. It's not the best way to approach a software solution, but if you role play as the computer, you could. In my case, I said, well, hold on. What I'm seeing is the last frame is there, even though the tool really should be off. Technically, according to the code. I mean, this is why I didn't even think that this could happen. It's because before it is done, it resets the frame, it grabs that frame and puts it on the material, the display of the visual effect, that frame, and then turns it off. That's what this line of code is doing. It's disabling the component that shows you the frame. And then it turns off the entire tool, getting it ready to show again. So logically, this should never have happened, but apparently it could. Right? Because I saw the bug. I saw these frames sitting there and I'm like, what? But I said, well, hold on. If I don't touch this, because apparently this has been running fine up until I saw this problem. But I know that our whole tool is disabled when it's turned off. I can double check that I turn off the display first. In that way, I'm able to pretty reliably say there shouldn't be a case. Didn't happen all the time. It happened rarely. Again, it was an edge case. So it was a form of stress testing, I guess accidental. I have gotten it to a place where I can build the game and play it. And so I've been playing it myself because I don't think anyone else would understand what's going on in the game yet. But that's where I saw it. So this is a form of stress testing where I did see a problem and I was able to say, hold on, if I just do this, I might be able to make sure that it doesn't show that last frame on the build. So that was one example of a problem that I noticed on the build, and I found another one. I don't know that these edge cases are easily reproducible, but let's check it out. Like I said, the animation bug happened fairly rarely, but it did happen. So I knew that it was something that I should go try and chase down. Unfortunately, those rare bugs mean that I need to keep testing and hope it doesn't happen, and proving a negative is kind of difficult. Anyway, the other bug had to do with the music. So hopefully you can hear the music. In our case, I think I have an account here called Test. Pretty sure. Yeah. The other bug had to do with music. A music loop began when I started the game, and it just gracefully continued the same loop exactly where it was as I went from the splash screen here to this main menu. And as I go to other menu screens and back to the main menu, it should not restart the loop. But I noticed that sometimes it would here on the build. So I'm technically still in the main menu scene right now, so it's not going to do it. But for example, yeah, see, I should not hear it do this, restart the music loop, and I'm not. Fortunately, however, I need to try and trigger it, otherwise I can't demonstrate the issue. Here, we've gone to a new scene, and it's made to crossfade to a new music loop. It's supposed to know that this is a different musical loop, and so go ahead and crossfade. Fade down the menu, fade up the battle. Well, and same thing when we come back to this menu. This scene, in particular, the main menu, is made to trigger that main menu music because you come back here. This scene also does that because it is the first scene you see where the music should start. So these together, the main menu and the splash screen, potentially could be stomping on each other, and I already put in a mechanic that accounted for this and said, hold on, if it is the same musical loop you would like to start, but it's already playing, then forget about it. Don't restart it. That said, I definitely heard that happen at least once. And if it doesn't happen, I can't fix it. So what I'd be hearing if the bug did happen is this piece of music restarting and crossfading, which is a little subtle and hard to hear, difficult to recognize, but I've heard this song enough that I can. So it's not happening. Darn it. I swear I heard it happen once. Maybe if I try and go between these very, very, very quickly. There it is. There it is. So you heard it. There it is. There it is. Okay, so if I go quickly, I can make it happen. So here's an edge case. I mean, what player is going to do this? Well, not many. But it's not impossible. It is possible. This is the definition of an edge case. Possible, even if it's unlikely. So to solve this, we are stress testing right now. I'm like literally you could see the stress on the system by doing it quickly like this, right? That's why they call it stress testing. So here I am getting it to a place where it can begin to play the menu music, and it kind of plays it again. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, menu. There it is. So it did it kind of twice. That is subtle. And you could definitely say like, wow, man, I think players are going to forgive you for that. I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with that. But as a general rule, a designer would never let that go. As a general rule, we are trying for comprehensive reliability assurance. We're trying for no bugs. We're trying for a consistent experience. And technically speaking, for the player psychology, if we distract them with something like a bug, even a small one, we are taking them out of the experience as opposed to continually and reliably supporting them in the experience with no interruption. When we remind the player, hey, you're just playing a game, they're like, oh man, I wanted to play this Fantasyland game where I am the hero and helping people, battling forces with these crazy cards. And so when we tell them, yeah, you're just playing a game, well, design says, as a general rule, bad. Bad designer. Go fix that. So even though this is minor, that very minor restart of the same song is something I want to fix as basically a means to describe what it is to go after this kind of edge case bug. So we are definitely in this place here. Does the music playing work? Does it fade up and fade down and crossfade? Yes. The integration of the menu, which has a trigger, asking the audio manager to crossfade. Is the integration of those things working? Kind of, yeah, actually. I do wonder if this is only in the build or if it's also in the editor, but I don't know if it matters that much. Does the player understand how to use this? Yeah, it's kind of happening behind the scenes automatically. It's not a direct player system. It's indirectly happening when they switch menus. So now we're in stress testing and we're finding this condition, this edge case. Hey, you know, if you switch from one menu to the other really quickly, you can get this crossfade to be, working, but in a place where it's in between two songs, and it doesn't realize that it should not play the same song. It shouldn't crossfade to the same song. It doesn't realize that because it's in the middle of a crossfade. By analyzing the edge case, I'm able to get a pretty good sense of what possible solutions there might be. And so we're there. But like we said, first step is recognizing that this is a problem. Caring about it. Okay, so here we are, caring about the problem, trying to fix it. In this case, we are going to focus on the audio manager. The audio trigger is dead simple, and I'm not even going to touch it, because it's literally just saying, yo, audio manager, play this sound. It's the audio manager that analyzes, hey, this is a musical loop. Hey, I'm already playing a musical loop. Hey, I will crossfade now. Yeah? So everything is on the audio manager. Let's go there. I don't need to go through the whole tool, but I do need to say there is a place in here where I implement the rule. The rule is if you're being asked to play a sound, like let's just go straight down to play sound. If you're being asked to play a sound, it is music, and you already have that musical thing, then ignore it. That's this rule right here. So literally, this function is called by the trigger. So we go from one menu to another, and the trigger says, play the sound. Technically, it's doing exactly what we told it to do, but it gets to here, and it should be doing this a little bit better. It's not. In other words, let's go ahead and fix me to indicate this is a bug. So here's the problem that we've identified, and I think it truly is the condition, because the only way I got to hear the problem is when it was in the middle of a crossfade. So I think this is actually a new condition we haven't applied here to this rule that we like. So to make this better, we're going to have to relook at this one line of code. Find loop playing is another function we made to go see if this particular song we're being asked to play is the same as the one the one we're being asked to play now is the same as one that I can find. Okay. So first of all, this would be like I need to review what these arguments are. Exclude source. No, I really do need to comment my stuff a little bit better. Clearly this function we made is trying to say, go find the musical loop that is playing, come back with an index, an integer, and if it's less than, sorry, if it's more than -1, okay, so if it was invalid, we would be ignoring it right here. But if it's more than -1, then we keep going. We say, and among the sources of sounds that we have, go find the one that matches this, and we already validated that it is more than -1, it is valid. If this clip that is currently playing, oh, that's it, find the one sound that is playing as a loop. That's what it is, okay. And if that clip is playing the same as this clip, then that's the condition that we've currently said we should ignore. Apparently, this skips this condition. We might also be in the middle of a crossfade. So let's game this out. What if I'm going from the game loop and I'm crossfading to the menu loop? Cool. Everything's fine. But then I also now want to crossfade, and I'm calling this function now to crossfade to the menu loop again. What we want to do is recognize, hold on, this is the one that is technically playing right now. Right now, it's the game loop that's playing, so this is fine. That's currently why this bug is happening, I'm pretty sure. But what we need to do is recognize, hold on, you are already crossfading, and you are crossfading to the same loop. So now ignore that. So in other words, we need to build in a new condition to here so that it also ignores it for this case. So in other words, if crossfading and target is same, ignore. So we're going to ignore if it's already playing. That's actually working fine. What we need to do is discern what our target to a current crossfade is, and if we are currently crossfading and that target is the same, then ignore. Okay, so this would solve this problem, I think. Again, we're analyzing our way to solve this bug, which is not the best way, but we're going to test in the end to make sure. So, okay, what's a clean way to indicate that we are currently crossfading? Run fades, there we go. Fades length. So we are using these fades, but it's got to be very specific to fading between one loop and another. I think we could do other fades. Pretty sure we can. So let's look at update fades for a second. Yeah, we can fade other things, not just music. So we really need to be like specific about it. I mean, actually we don't, right? If we are recognizing we're in a crossfade and the target of that crossfade is the same as the one we're asking to fade now, we should ignore it. As long as we can find the target. How do we know the target? When we add a fade, what information do we have? What category? That's good, but I don't care. I actually just need the source index. that's how we identify which one it is, so that's good. Okay, so fade source index is what we're going to look for. We can only fade. Oh, I'm remembering a rule for this tool. To make this simpler, I said there's a rule. We can only fade one category of thing at a time. Okay? And that's why I'm using category. That's what's up. Okay. That made this simpler, and I think it's going to make our new thing simpler as well. So what sources and find loop playing is doing is saying go find the currently playing music. And if that clip equals the clip we are currently asking for, skip it. Yep. So find loop playing is, I think, the key to all of this, because I believe this function is looking for the one that has been faded. Exclude source is a argument we can provide that will say, please find the loop that is playing, excluding a particular sound. In other words, a particular source. Oh, so we know that there is a audio source playing one of the sounds, and we want to go find the audio source. No, we're finding sounds. Oh, no, sources. Right. No, we are finding the source index, excluding a particular source. Okay, this makes sense. I'm glad I named it this way. That said, I really do need to make my code a little bit more understandable for future me. Provide source index given category. Sound category. Category. And optional source index to ignore. Use -1 if all sources are valid. So this now is something that actually is printed out as I hover over it. This is a tooltip. It's helping me remember what I was doing. And while I type in the function call, these things are also being printed out in the tooltip. So it's just easier to read. It helps me remember what it is we're doing here. Yeah? And loop. Fading up. Wait a minute. Is this going to help us? This is... Oh. No, we're looking at fades, not sources. In the category, find the loop fading up. Actually, hold on. What are you returning? You're returning the fade index. Well, that will help us, actually. But again, I'm not being clear. Provide fade index given sound category. sound category. All right. I could obviously I could do more commenting because that's just a best practice. But at this point, I'm down to say, if we have the ability to find the one that's fading up, we can access. See, add fade includes information we like. The source index. Okay, so if we find the fade, by category, like music, find the loop fading up. And if that fading up source index equals the one we are calling, ignore it. I don't think we've done that yet, and that is the thing that would solve our problem. This problem is the thing that's fading up, like we're going from gain loop to menu loop, so menu loop is fading up, and this equals that, and therefore ignore. Yes. Okay, so this is just validating that the we have a loop that's already playing. Okay. Right, because this comes back -1, right? Returns index if valid, -1 if invalid. Returns index if valid, -1 if invalid. And this will help us. Let's use these. This one's called find loop fading up. This one called find loop playing. These are actually giving us two different pieces of information, but figure it out. This is giving us a source index. So among all the sources, the audio sources that we're keeping track of, because we do create and destroy them as we need them. That's what this audio manager does. Among all the sources, go find one that's a loop playing in this category. Okay. This sort of is set to ignore the entire play sound thing, but we will not ignore it if it is an invalid return from this function, which is looking for the current sound. In other words, there's no sound in this category playing, so go ahead. That's what this is saying. But if there is a valid number, then we have to continue. And so this part of the condition, the only other part of the condition right now, is just saying it's been playing, right? Go find it. We found it. Here it is. And so is that clip matching? Okay. We also, let's see. Okay. So this is an AND, which means both of these individual conditions, this top one and this bottom one, need to be true for the entire condition to be true and then to ignore. Now, in this case, we actually have an OR. Yes, if there is no current loop playing, we're good. Let's just go. So that's true. But now we're going to do something else, because here I'm going to put parentheses around this condition and another. I'm going to say OR, and I'm going to do another condition. But I'm going to have to wrap it around with these parentheses. Why? Just like math, parentheses are going to be evaluated first. Oops. And so I need this condition to have this here right now. I'm going to do it this way. If this is false, it will stop here and it will just make the sound happen because there's no sound playing in this category anyway. Go for it. But if there is, then I'm going to want it to ignore this play sound call if it is the same. It's been playing, it's at full volume, and it's the same one as we're asking for, so please ignore. Now the new one is also ignore it, in other words, or, if this target is the same as this. We haven't checked that yet, so now we're doing it. We're saying find loop fading up, and this is in this is the return value is an index of the fades, not the sources, but the fades. Yet this is also asking for a category. Okay, there's our tooltip we just put in. Excuse me. Visual Studio is getting in the way. It's the same as this, so I'll just use it. In this category, go find the loop that is fading up. Okay? And if this is, I guess it also has to be validated, so it's more than -1. Shoot, this is a complex condition. Okay. So we still have that parentheses. This matches this. Okay, but now this or has to include a couple of things because we are, again, making sure it is valid. And then we are saying, just like we did with the find the loop playing return, we said, is this valid? Doing the same thing here. I'm using this trick of giving me an index, that's the return value. And the trick is, yeah, if it's an index that could never be. An array starts at 0 and goes up, but never goes down. There's no -1 index. So this is clear and safe to use as an invalid return value. I'm not using it. But if this is true, I'm going to have to also play around with the order of these things, because just like this order helped us before moving on, this is true, we should just make the sound no matter what. I'll play around with that order later, but right now I'm saying, okay, this is a valid loop that is currently playing, and it equals the same as what is currently playing, so ignore it. I might change the order because this one might actually need to go first. But we'll just keep going. Let's pretend it's not the same. Technically, that's the case that we're dealing with. It's game loop, not menu loop. So they're not the same. So now I'm saying, well, or the one that is fading up is valid, and that fade and that index this one we just got that is clear and valid has a what source, no, sound index, source index. Yes. And the source index, of course, is a this got messy. Sources. Okay. And this also has a source clip. Okay. Now, if this equals sounds index clip, just like above, We do this check up here just like this. We're doing the same thing here, but what we're checking now is different. This is the one that's currently playing, and in our, pretend case, it's actually a game loop. So these aren't equal. Okay, it's asking the question, are these equal? And it's like, no. So it's fine. When we say, well, or the one that's fading up is valid, and the one that's fading up is a fade whose source has the same clip. If those are equal, then please ignore. Okay. It's a long way around to say, my goodness. So I think actually the order might be okay. I know this is hard to read. Let me kind of simplify that a little bit. But first we need to check that our previous condition, which was this, is still there, which is true. This or allows either this or the rest of this to be true. Either one of those could be true, and then the condition is true and we will ignore this. So we're saying ignore this, play sound call, ignore it if there's no sound playing, or there is a sound playing and it's the same, ignore this if there is a valid sound playing and it's the same, or there is a valid fade happening and what is fading to is the same. Then also ignore it. And I think that's exactly what this is describing right here. Okay, we need to test. Actually, what I should do is, I was going to say, to test, I need to ensure that I can test. Let's say this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put it in some block comment code. So it's out of the way, and then I'm going to undo this. That sounds silly. You just fixed it. Why are you undoing the fix? But it's literally because I need to see the problem first. I need to be sure that I can make the problem happen when I do this in the editor. So let's try. I think we were able to reliably reproduce the issue when we go quickly between the main menu and the splash screen after going to the game. So here we are in the game. Yep, that's it. I can reproduce this very reliably now if I go to the game and come out and then immediately go to splash. Yep, great. That's good. That I can reproduce the issue because now, not only could I analyze this and have a pretty good idea about how to fix it, but now I can actually test the fix. This is the fix. Oops. Lost something. So, I'd like it to be readable at some point, but I'm going to stick with this for now. So this was the fix. Let's test it out. What we're expecting is to do the exact same thing, but now it ignores the call to play the music again and crossfade the same music. Okay. mean, now that we've done this, you see why some people would be like, nah, no big deal. Your players will forgive you. Relax about it. Copium, copium, copium. The designer should say, yes, but hold my beer. I'm going to fix this. Thank you. So let's do the same thing again. We're in the game. Let me come back out to the menu and immediately go to the splash screen. Aha! I do not hear the very subtle double start to this music. We have to do it quickly because we have to be in the middle of this crossfade to hear the problem. Yeah, I think we did it. All right. We're not doing it quickly. It has finished the crossfade and it works as before, which was fine. This edge case was rare because how often are you going to switch from one menu to another, particularly these two, that quickly in the middle of a crossfade? That's what made it an edge case, a rare case. And it's frankly what separates the good design and software people from the bad. Did I say that out loud? Okay, so what we've been playing around with today is relating good practices of software development and engineering to the tenets of design, which is going to be, gosh, I need to improve this, and I absolutely need to not distract our player from the good stuff that we're doing with our game. We went, we started with talking about this in terms of what we saw in #Blood and how their pieces worked. They worked together fine, and I could understand them. But then this rare case caused a game-breaking problem that, if found, could have been detected and analyzed in terms of that edge case, and solutions could be found and one chosen if they had done that. And we said, we have a couple of issues in our game too. Let's go fix those. And we did so. We looked at a case of finding a problem with our animation where I had already fixed that off stream. And then we went through and found a problem with our crossfading music that I noticed once. Was able to reproduce it, analyze it, and find our way to a solution. And along the way, by the way, make our code a little more readable. By the way, speaking of that, let's clean up. This is going to clean up now. This is the same rule. It's just a more detail on the same rule, so I'm happy to just put that right back. If I really needed to analyze this, there would be a little more help indicating what each of these functions are doing because we added more comments in our code. So these tooltips are actually helpful. This naming convention on the functions where we describe the action it is doing, like a verb, helps as well. Find the loop that is playing, find the loop that is fading up. This is easier to read now, although there's a lot of complicated bits in here. The return value of one function turns out to be an index that needs to be referred to in one array, and then that used in the index of another array, blah, blah, blah. It gets a little complicated. But we built up that complexity layer by layer and got there. It's literally just one line of code. That's all we worked on today. But we fixed a problem, and our players will not be distracted by that little thing. They will instead enjoy our game as intended, just like we like it. So, today, we got to go back and look at a detail in our game that we were making called Shuffle Wars. The result was a minor fix, but as we get closer and closer to the end of a project, that's what we care about. Subtle things, really minor things. It's what separates a good game from a great game. The last thing you want as a game designer is seeing something that is wrong, no matter how small, after it's released, and you have no control over it. You can't unsee it. It's torture. All high-end professional entertainment people have this issue. They are forever haunted by the mistakes and little bugs and things, their work in the past. So the way to prevent that is comprehensive reliability assurance. We do so with the testing method that we described today. Huzzah! Man, we actually did game development today, as well as some gameplay. We're going to go back to more gameplay. We'll have more fun. Maybe Valorant, maybe not. In the meantime, have fun, take care, see ya, bye-bye.